this lesson, we're going to take a look at a unique tool in Trade Navigator called the scoring function. I really like this function, and I'll tell you why. And we're going to go through a scenario of building that function. If you have a strategy where you're tracking multiple conditions, there's several ways within Trade Navigator that you can track them. But I think with this particular tool, again called the scoring function, it will allow us to track and apply a weighted value to our individual conditions. So again, let me give you an example. Here's my chart window, and my strategy has 5 conditions that I'm looking for. When all 5 of these conditions occur on one particular bar, then I'll know I'll be able to move on my particular strategy. Now, one way I can track that is by creating these indicators that I've created that represents each one of the conditions. So you'll notice along the top edge of Trade Navigator, I have condition 1 through 5. When all of those conditions occur on one particular bar, I can move on my particular position. So the many ways that we can track this are by the indicators on the chart window, but also through our symbol grid. In the symbol grid, I can track each one of the conditions individually. Now, what I've done with those conditions, I put all of those conditions into a filter I called My Strategy Scan. Now, this filter is taking all 5 of the conditions and only returning a result for me. So here's again another way to be able to track whether or not my conditions are being met in the market. But we again can do this with the unique tool called the scoring function. Let me show you now how to build a scoring function and then how we can display it in the many areas in Trade Navigator for tracking purposes. Now, when we're building our scoring function, we're going to assume that you have all of your conditions pre-built, such as I have condition 1 through 5. Now we're going to go through the Trader's Toolbox to the Functions tab, and we'll click on the New button on the right-hand side. Within the function window, we have categories that we can choose from, and the category that we're selecting is scoring. Now, once we have the scoring area of the function opened up, there's really 3 columns that we'll have to deal with. We'll have the Use column, which will activate that particular condition. We have the points. This is how we're going to weight each condition. And then we have the condition that will be added to that point. Now, again, this is assuming that you have all of your functions, your pre-made conditions made already. And so now we're going to select to build our scoring function using those pre-built functions. We'll check the box to use, and now we're prompted to select from the functions in our list. And again, we're going to just locate the functions that I've created, and we'll start with condition number 1. You'll basically be repeating that process until you have all of your conditions applied to your scoring function. Now, once we've applied all of our conditions, we can decide how we're going to weight each condition by setting a number of points. And just for the simplicity of this training, we'll go ahead and say that we'll weigh each condition evenly, giving each condition a 1-point weight value. So now, when I'm looking for the results of this, I'm going to be looking for my scoring function to return a score of 5. So now we're going to save our scoring function and give it a name. Once you've named your scoring function, go ahead and click the OK button, and the scoring function window itself does not close, so we'll go ahead and close it now. Now let's take a look at how we can use our scoring function on the chart window. And I'm going to remove my individual conditions here because This scoring function is going to replace that. It's going to replace having to watch or look for those individual highlight markers, for example, as opposed to looking at a particular score. Now, a scoring function is a type of indicator, so we're going to apply this to the chart window by the Add to Chart feature, and we're then going to go to the Indicator tab and locate My Score. And then we'll apply My Score to the chart by clicking the Add button or by double-clicking My Score. Remember that some conditions will have to wait for the market to close, so you'll need to, in some cases, wait for the market to close before you have your final score. Now, we can also view and track our score through the quote board in a couple of different ways. Now, with our condition as it stands right now, we're waiting for a particular value, a total score of 5. We might also be looking for the condition to have a score of 3, and that will tell us that we're going to move on our strategy. So we're going to set up one condition in our quote board that will look for true or false. Is the score greater than 3? And then we'll also create a criteria in the quote board that will display the actual score next to the symbol. So let's take a look at building first our true or false condition. Do we have a score greater than 3? And to do that, because I have my scoring function already built, I'm going to build now the criteria for that condition, true or false condition, with the condition builder. Now, using the condition builder, I'm going to select my score, and I again want to know when that is greater than 3. We'll save as a new criteria, and we'll just call it my score. Whenever you build a new criteria, remember you're prompted to scan that criteria, so we'll go ahead and say yes to that. And now I need to build one more criteria because the criteria now is also going to display the individual score. And I can't do that with the condition builder, so we're going to go back to the Trader's Toolbox under the Criteria tab, and we'll create a new criteria. When we're prompted to use the condition builder, we'll say no. Now, my score is a function, so I do not have to recreate it. When I go to apply it to a criteria, I'll simply just need to locate my score from the functions list. Now we'll save it. We'll click the OK button, and again, remember we're prompted to scan any new criteria that we build, so we'll say yes to that. Now, to apply both the true or false condition and or the scoring value to the quote board, we'll click on the quote board icon to open that up. Now, here is an example of my quote board where I have my 5 conditions already implanted in the quote board. Now, the way it's set up here is a little harder to read for me, and this is the reason why I want to use the scoring function. I really don't need to know about all 5 conditions unless either 3 or all 5 conditions occur. So the way that we're creating this particular criteria to be placed in the quote board is so we can keep track of that score. So through the quote board, we'll right mouse click in the grid area and select Edit Fields Columns to Display. These are the current columns that I have in the quote board, and on the right hand side we'll add. Now my score greater than 3 shows up there, and I also have my score value that I've created, and we'll add that at the same time. And you can do that by holding down the control key while you're selecting your items. Now we'll click OK. And I think I'm going to put my score just above condition 1, and my dhow also just above. Now it may look a little strange there, but when I click OK, those two columns will be ahead of condition 1. Now in my window here in the quote board, it's displaying the two conditions that I built. Remember, I can build my scoring function to do two things: display for me a value as well as display a true or false condition. The true or false condition here is my score being greater than 3, and also that the value of the score is being displayed next to the individual condition I have there. Now, it's currently being displayed as false is because my condition is greater than 3, which includes anything above 4 or 5. So we'll see false next to number 3 there because, again, it has to be greater than, and it wasn't set up for greater than or equal. But now from this point, I could actually go back and remove conditions 1 through 5 from my quote board, but I think I'm going to go ahead and leave them just for the purposes of this training. And now I can go in and set up tracking for these conditions. For example, my score greater than 3, I only want to know when this condition is true. So I'm going to set up an alert by right mouse clicking just inside of the column for my score and select Add Alert. Now in the alert window, the alert setup window, I'll select to create the alert for the entire quote board tab and that the value will be true, and I'll even set it up to change the cell color. And I think for this purposes of today's class, I could choose any of the actions here, but I'm just going to have it change the cell color, so I'll turn off the pop-up message and click OK. The same thing will apply to my score dhow. I want to know when this number reaches 5, so I'll right mouse click again in the column for my score dhow, Add Alert, and again I'm going to set this up to apply to the entire quote board tab. I want to know when the condition is equal to 5, and I'll change the cell color when that is true. And again, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my actions here, but you can see you can choose any one of the actions by placing a check next to it, and we'll click the OK button. So now I have a column, 2 columns added to my quote board that allow me to track my strategy's conditions, I think, more effectively. The benefit here is that the quote board will display this information for any time frames that you select: daily, weekly, monthly, a 30-minute time frame. So you can also set up your quote board to have specific intraday time frames that these conditions may apply to. And now that I have the alerts set up in the quote board, I can actually go back to my chart window and disable my conditions. This will clean up my chart pretty nicely, and I don't have to worry about figuring out which one of those conditions has been met and which one of the conditions has not been met. So try using a scoring function to track your strategy.